Welcome to the channel. So what are we doing today? Well, we are getting ready for 2024 Hot Rod Drag Week. So we've got to do some stuff to the Dart to get it ready. Not a whole lot. I need to take all the seat belts out. I need to get some new seat belts for it because mine have expired. I'm actually going to take the driver or passenger seat out, remove it completely, as well as the passenger belts. That'll be about 40 pounds out of the car. Because I need to defend my top 32 shootout win from last year. And to do that, we need to make the car as light as possible, try to run 10s all week to make the top 32 qualifiers. Unfortunately, I was going to have somebody riding with me for the week, but he has a family member that needs to have surgery on the first day of drag week, so he had to, step out. But my son will be there on Sunday and Monday to experience drag week for the first time, so you'll see him in some of the videos. But the other things we need to do is go through the entire car, clean it, oil change, fluid level checks, need to go under the car, grease everything, make sure everything's tight, nothing's damaged. It's about 13 days away from Tech Day, today being Sunday, Labor Day. September 1st, so basically we're going to go through the entire car. I need to make sure the little trailer that I'm going to carry is packed and ready to go, that I don't forget anything, extra fluids. That trailer pretty much has, whatever's in it, nothing ever really comes out of it. It's got its own separate tool set and all that, so everything should be there, but I just need to go through it and make sure it is. So with that said, guys, let's kind of jump into just making sure the car is good to go. I do have a new carburetor coming for it. I bought a refurbished carburetor from Holley, the Holley Brawler 750 race version. Unfortunately, it came in and it needed to be sent back. I'll drop a couple pictures in here so you can see why. And so I'm doing a whole nother video on that one that you can watch about, hopefully when I get it back before drag week, we can put it on, at least go for a ride and make sure everything works on it, and then we'll try to make a couple test hits on that Sunday. So with that, guys, let's jump into the car here and get it all checked out, get it cleaned up, and get it ready to go. So just a little bit more about the Dart. You can see it's got a full interior in the car. Door panels, glass, carpet, headliner, full dash. There's no heat box or AC or anything in it. The radio is not functioning. There's no speakers, but the original back seat is in the car. And I do run, lightweight aluminum seats. You see B&M shifter, and then I've got, the ability to charge, the GoPro up now, or my phone as I'm driving down the road. So we've got cigarette lighter in there and a full set of gauges. We've got water temp, oil pressure, transmission temp, voltmeter, and AFR gauge in there. So we can see how that's all going. You can see this cage would cert easily to 850. I do not need a dash bar because my original firewall was not modified. You can also see I've got rocker bars in the car. So the cage is built very sturdy. The one thing I don't like about it is these front bars. I wish I'd have somehow done more like this, where they went down further so it'd be easier to get in and out. The engine combination in this car, it's a little 360 small block. On drag week, we'll either run 125 or 150 shot of nitrous on the car. Depending on how the week goes. We could be probably running the 150 if I had to guess. It's basically a stock bottom end Dodge Magnum engine with Edelbrock heads, a simple Voodoo camshaft, a dual plane intake, and a 750 Carb Shop vacuum secondary carburetor, and a set of old headers that I need to replace. They're pretty well worn out. And then, I've got an aluminum radiator, and I'm running some Contour Mystique cooling fans, so they've got high and low speed. So a very simple setup. LED headlights. You can see these are knockoff weld wheels. They work really good for the road. And then these are my street setup, tires. These are a set of old police car rims. that I run, and then, you know, I can actually fit the drag tires in the trunk of the car. So anyway, let's get back to what we originally were doing. Now you just know a little background about what the car is. We will run 1080s with this car hopefully all week. On the 150 shot, you know, the 125 shot's been 1090. I've run 1086s at best on a 150 with a heck of a headwind, so I think there's a little bit more in the car. But like I said, we're going to pull the seat out of this, so I'm not going to have anybody riding with me. I will be traveling with like 3 other cars for the week, so I've got, you know, plenty of people that you know, I'll be traveling with, so I can actually just put the scooter here and my suitcase here and make it easier and take 40 pounds, you know, out of the car, 40-50 pounds by taking that seat out. And then, like I said, you know, removing the hitch out back here, 4 bolts, and we can pull the hitch off this thing and drop 40 pounds in a hurry. So that's kind of the Dodge Dart. Just a little background, like I said, if you're new to the channel. So if you're unfamiliar how seat belts work, or SFI racing belts work, they're only good for basically 2 years. You'll see here they either expire in June or they expire in December. Those are the only 2 months, and you can see they'll basically say valid until, and then you've got to replace your entire, you know, set of belts. Sometimes you can get them re-web if you have the more expensive cam lock style, or, you know, you just buy another set. So it's time for me to buy another set. You can see based on this expiration date. So I've got a new set coming in soon from Summit Racing. Now the other thing, guys, to make sure of, you know, when you show up for tech day, your headlights work, right? Turn signals work, brake lights work, running lights work, you know, everything works. If you have a trailer, make sure your trailer lights work. Stop, turn, run. They check all that. Make sure your horn works. Okay, they'll check your horn to make sure it works. If not, you have to fix it in tech line. Or they'll push you off to the side and make you fix it. They will a lot of times check your master disconnect switch to make sure your alternator does not keep your car running. If you have not checked it, you have to do it and you have to get it fixed. Sometimes they will check neutral safety switch. Not all the time, but they can check neutral safety switch, so make sure your neutral safety switch works. So just some other things to be cognizant of, they do check. Depending on how fast you are, right? Make sure your SFI stuff is up to speed. Make sure your belts are, you know, we kind of talked about it. Make sure your belts are up to cert. Make sure your cage is certed. You have your license. You have insurance. Your insurance matches the VIN on the car, you know, stuff like that. They check all that stuff, guys. The faster your car is, the more stuff they will check on your car. You know, and obviously they can pull you, if you're a really fast car, pull you off, and they can bump your engine for cubic inch size, you know, and do different things like that. They will check that kind of stuff. So anyway, just something before I forget, other things you need to prepare and check to make sure, you know, you leave the garage. All right, guys, so some of the things we're checking under the car. Make sure, you know, U-bolts are tight, shocks are tight. You know, the U-joint straps are tight for the rear end. You know, make sure fuel lines and everything are good. Fuel filters are good. I had actually ripped this mount off the frame at Sick Week this past year in February. So I had to mount a new one on here. It's been through a couple of drag and drives now. So I'm just inspecting it to make sure, you know, it's still matted in here good, that it's not going to come out on me. So looks like through a couple of drag and drive events now and several thousand miles, it's doing good. So, you know, we're inspecting that. We're inspecting like the bushings on the shackles, stuff like that, you know, here on the back of the car. So those are some of the things that we're just checking to make sure, you know, fuel line routing, brake line routing, you know, stuff like that is what we're checking here on the back of the car. Sorry guys, so what all are we checking under the hood? Well, we'll check the catch can, make sure it's empty. I don't want, you know, fluid leaking out and getting under the rear tires or putting fluid under the track for somebody else. to have an issue. We'll do the same thing with the coolant overflow. Well, not so much empty it, but make sure it's secure. That's not going to come loose during a run. Same with the catch can, vibration and stuff. We'll just make sure it's still solidly mounted. The welds aren't breaking, nothing like that. Yes, that is disconnected because I was hoping to swap out the new carburetor. So I need to, either hopefully before drag week, I can put the new carburetor on and we can drive it and test it, and we'll reattach the nitrous stuff correctly. But then we'll go through and make sure, like radiator hoses are still good. Coolant bypass is still good. All the wiring, for the alternator, for the, the temp sensor here, for the cooling fans, all that stuff is still good. We'll check the routing of all the wires, check it for any chafing that's going on, especially like the power wire coming through, the starter wires, the wiring for the electric fans and the headlights, and make sure we don't have any problems. Actually, the relay there for the low beams, the wires pulled out of the connector, so I really need to take the time and fix that correctly. So I went through tech and they didn't work, but I had high beams, so I was able to get through tech. And then I got back to the pits and I fixed low beams. We'll make sure, the transmission cooling line routing, right? Make sure there's no chafing. You can see here I've added convolute tubing, some plastic tubing over the line where it's going to rub the cowl here. Or the core support, I should say. Just check the transmission line routing going down, make sure it's not touching the headers, that kind of stuff. We'll make sure header bolts are tight. We'll double check, make sure the bolts here are tight. I'm going to go underneath and we'll check to make sure the flex plate bolts, not the flex plate, but the torque converter bolts are tight. The transmission bolts are tight. The motor mount bolts, we're looking good. And then we'll go under the car and we'll check out the entire front suspension. It really looks like I need to clean out all the bugs here from the radiator. Probably should get the garden hose out and wash the radiator real good because, yeah, there's a few in there and a few in the transmission cooler that we should probably clean out. And then like I said, we'll go under the car and, and I'll show you what I check under it to make sure it's good. I'll also make sure, like my cooling fans here, aren't hitting and rubbing, and putting a hole into the radiator. I've had it mounted this way for a couple of years now, and I've got some, rubber tube here to kind of help keep it from hitting the radiator, but we want to make sure that all the rubber tubing is in place, the radiator is bolted tight, the ground is, good, that kind of stuff. It's easier, guys, to check all this stuff at home before you ever hit the road to make sure, you don't have any wiring chafing, anything rubbing, go under the car and do a good thorough inspection before you ever hit the road, because just, if you've been driving your car on the street for a little while, you've never done a drag and drive, obviously you're going to be putting more torment because you'll be putting 1,300 roughly miles probably for drag week, and then all the passes you'll be making, all the various road conditions you'll see, so you want to make sure everything's good. All right, guys, so what do we check underneath the car? Well, I check the tires, make sure they're showing a nice even wear pattern, just to make sure the alignment's good. Also check to make sure, wheel bearings. I actually had a wheel bearing go bad on the ride home. I think it was 2022 drag week. I drove my car from Martin, Michigan to where I live, which is a couple hours away. And I got home, and then like a week or two later, I checked, and I had actually a bad wheel bearing. And it almost left me stranded on the side of the road. So definitely check your wheel bearings. Make sure, again, they're greased and everything's good there. I just greased the whole front suspension of my car to make sure it's good. And, I'll check to make sure, nothing's worn out on any of the steering components. And then the other thing, again, as I mentioned earlier, I'm going to crawl up under there and check like the torque converter bolts, as well as like the transmission bolts, starter bolts, just any fasteners that, could wiggle their way loose, you know, we'll do an inspection on them. So we'll do a good inspection underneath the car, as well as like the lower radiator hose we'll be able to get to, you know, that kind of stuff. So we'll check all that out. The other thing, guys, is not to forget maintenance on your trailer. You know, double check to make sure your wheel bearings are not loose, they're greased good. You know, these are metric bearings, not standard, so it's always good to carry a spare set in your trailer with these Harbor Freight setups. You can see this is kind of a short tongue. This is the little, I guess it'd be 4x4 kit. I actually bought this from somebody on Facebook Marketplace for like $200, and then I enclosed this myself. So it worked out really good. This, you originally had the little 8-inch tires, and I left them on there for a couple of years, but I would recommend 12-inch tires at a minimum. Those little 8-inch, man, are spinning like crazy when you're going down the highway at like 65. So I just enclosed this with some scrap, you know, angle iron and a little bit of, you know, 1/4-inch plywood. And this is actually aluminum siding that I got, you know, that was actually left in the attic of the house when they, you know, did the flashing around the windows and stuff. So those nets also are great for putting just little small things in that you grab quite often. You can see like my nitrous, you know, blanket, and there's like zip ties and beer koozies, most important thing. You know, just like an extra fan belt, just, you know, or I should say alternator belt. You know, some tape and some fuel line, and down in there is just, you know, I keep like electrical stuff, some extra carb stuff, you know, the jack stands, you can see the shop towels, and, you know, a few tools, and, you know, just miscellaneous stuff. So anyway, don't forget to maintain this, and again, all your lights work. And since we're talking trailers, right, make sure your big trailer is also maintained, so, you know, you're not broke on the way, you know, to the event or home after you're wiped out from the event. So guys, that's kind of the health check, what I go through. This will be my 12th drag and drive event. I've done this will be my 4th drag week coming up. I've done an event called the Circuit. I've done an event, Rocky Mountain Race Week 2.0, the original, back in 2020. I've done 3 sick weeks and 2 sick summers. So this is, I think, my 12th event coming up. So 11th through 12th. Anyway, done a bunch of them. So this is what I go through to prep my car for these events, to make sure I don't have any problems. And the only problem, you know, the event I have not finished was this year at sick week, when I kicked the U-joint out, going through the big end. Actually, I just let off the gas after going through the traps. You know, I was still doing probably 105, 110 or something at that point in time when the U-joint cap decided to come out. The U-joint, or the drive shaft, stayed in the yoke, beat the living shit out of the car, and cracked the transmission bell housing. So that kind of ended the event. So we were up in Gainesville when that happened, and then had to get a ride back down to Orlando, and then, you know, truck and trailer back up to Gainesville, load everything up. I don't know what time it was. I think we got to the hotel around midnight that night up in Valdosta. So anyway, hope this, guys, helps you in your prep for a drag and drive event.